Hello, my name is Ian, and this is part one of a couple of videos that I'm going to make showing you the construction and painting of a Space Marine Devastator Squad Sergeant. Here are some of the tools that I'll be using. I have a scalpel, a side cutter, pin vise and drills, files for cleanup, liquid superglue and liquid plastic cement. Let's take a look at the sprues and see what the parts are. The box contains enough parts to make 5 complete Space Marine Devastators. There are quite a number of different options in the box. You can have different weapons and the figures can be posed in several different ways. A quick look at the instructions is always worth doing. It'll give you some idea of what the particular parts look like. It's always worth remembering that you should keep all the parts attached to the sprue until you need them. Start by cutting the parts off with the side cutter and then clean up with the scalpel afterwards. Always be careful when using a sharp knife and do make sure that the knife itself is sharp. A blunt blade is much more likely to slip and you could cut yourself. At this point you should also remove any mould lines. The easiest way is to use the scalpel blade and just gently scrape them off. We're now removing the legs. We're only going to take the parts off of this particular figure. We'll look at the rest at a later time. Just trim off any large areas of plastic and then use the scalpel to finish the cleanup. Again, check the part for any mould lines and just gently scrape it off with the scalpel. While selecting the parts, look to see if there are any that need to be put together before you do the main construction. For instance, the chest part will need to be attached to the back before adding it to the legs. If you actually do try to add the chest to the legs before it has had time to dry, there's a very good chance it might come apart, and that could leave some nasty gaps. Make sure the part fits before you add any glue. In this case, I'm using a thin plastic cement. It's actually easier to use than the gel type because you can actually put the part together and then add the glue. It'll just simply run into the line between the parts. Just remember, use a very small amount of the glue. Just hold the parts together for a few seconds and it should be enough to hold it. Then leave it for several minutes to harden. Just continue to remove the parts. In this case, this is the Sergeant's gun. I'm using the combi bolter and plasma weapon. I'm now removing the main part of the gun. This also includes the Sergeant's hand, and it will be attached to the arm before adding it to the main body. Again, remove any rough areas and scrape off any of the mould lines. You also need to make sure that the parts fit correctly. They may need trimming, so double check before you actually start gluing them. In this case, I'm applying the glue to just one part of the gun. It's actually easier that way. It's one of the reasons why this glue is just so good to use. Just hold the part together for a few seconds. It should be enough to hold it, but it will take a little while for the glue to actually set. I've now checked the chest and back, and it's now glued solidly, and it's time to fit them to the legs. Again, just make sure the fit is good. If necessary, do a little bit of trimming before you add any glue. If you do find any gaps in the model, sometimes it might be necessary to use some filler. I tend to find that these Games Workshop models are pretty good, and I rarely have to use any filler on them at all. Next, I'm going to drill out the barrels. It gives it a much more realistic look. For this, I'm going to use a pin vise and some small drills. These are available from model shops and from some hardware shops. It's a useful tool to have, and I'll use it quite a bit during construction. To begin with, I'm going to use a sharp pointed bradawl just to start the hole off. If you try and do it with the drill, there is a possibility it might slip and you could damage the barrel, and in that case you're going to have to do some repair work. So once you've started, just place the drill bit into the hole that you've made with the bradawl. It just makes life a lot easier. Now, I'm going to use a larger drill bit just to open the barrel up to the correct size. You don't need to go in with this too deep. You could end up going out to the side of the barrel and damaging it. So, a little bit of care is needed. Just use your scalpel to clean up any of the rough areas. Now, we're removing the sergeant's right shoulder from the sprue. This is actually going to be added to the gun before it's added to the main body of the Marine. As usual, check the fit before you add any glue. Just hold the parts together for a few seconds. That should be enough. But you'll need to leave it for a few minutes for the glue to go off before you continue with the construction. Now I'm looking at the sergeant's left arm. In this case I'm going to use the one where he's pointing, but you can use other options. There are swords, even power fists that you can use. The choice is yours. I've now got all the parts removed and cleaned up, and we're ready for the main part of the construction. I'm going to start with the head. In this case it's not too important in which direction he's looking. You can make your mind up yourself and just glue it into place. With some of the figures it is important which direction the head is looking, because they should be sighting down the barrel of their weapons. So make sure you get that right before you actually glue the head into place. In cases like this, I tend to glue the weapon on first. Make sure it's in the right position, then add the head afterwards. Now it's time for the backpack. When gluing on items such as the backpack, it's worth having a good look at the figure from all angles, just to make sure that it's gone on at the right angle. If it's a bit cockeyed, it's not going to look right. We're nearly there. I've just got the shoulder pad to add now. Again, just make sure the fit is correct. A little dab of glue, hold it into place, and we're done. There are several other options in the box, such as servo skulls and purity seals. You can add these to any part of the model that you like. Take a look at the box art, it'll give you some ideas. And that's it, the construction is complete. All the model needs now is to be primed, ready for painting, and that I'm going to cover in the next part of my video.